Pat, is there any way we can tell if Carol's on Zoom here? Carol, you on?
I don't see her on right now, but I'll open it up.
Okay. All right, so Douglas Finance Committee coming to order, 7:02 on January 14, 2025. And let's just go around the room and identify ourselves for the record. So Sandy, you want to start?
Sandy Kuiper's Finance Committee.
Heather Moore, Finance Committee.
Michael Hudak, Finance Committee.
Dick Vandenberg.
Ryan Hogan.
Lynn Mazzulli.
Robert Leonardi.
Robert, welcome.
Thank you.
So Bob is okay, right?
Rob is okay.
Rob is
Rob,
okay?
please.
Rob is preferred.
Yes.
So Rob, give us a pencil sketch on who you are and why you're here.
Sure. So I am a resident of Douglas for almost 4 years, my wife and I. And I've been in the banking industry for the last 26 years. I've been in accounting for over 40 years. And it's something that, I care about, where I live. And so I wanted to contribute in whatever fashion I could. And it's something that, it appealed to me when I was at one of the town meetings and I had heard that there was an opening in the Finance Committee. That's when I approached and asked about how would I be able to get on the Finance Committee, because I was interested in that. So I am the controller at Millbury Federal Credit Union in Millbury. And I think that my wife and I have 6 kids and soon to have a 7th grandchild.
Oh, wow.
Are you a native New Englander?
I am not. I am originally from New York. I will state that I'm not a New York Yankees fan, so that...
New York City or the state?
Long Island.
Okay.
So when people ask me, oh, where are you from? I usually say Long Island, never say New York.
Mets, like the Mets.
Well, welcome, Rob.
Thank you. No, I'm actually a St. Louis Cardinals fan.
Oh, okay.
I've been my whole
Oh, there you go.
All right, I haven't heard from Howard, and Carol is supposedly on Zoom. Pat, any sign of her yet?
No, I don't see her yet.
Okay. Matt, you have the floor.
Yeah.
So I've asked Matt to sort of give us a roadmap of where we're headed as we start the budget process.
Alrighty then.
We've all been watching the select board on YouTube, Matt, so.
There you have. Before we get started, there's a little trivia since you're a history buff.
Yeah.
What was Ulysses S. Grant's real first name?
I do not know.
Hiram.
Oh, no kidding.
And they made a mistake at West Point on his enrollment forms. So he went under Ulysses Grant for that entire
He didn't
time.
really have an S, though, I don't.
No, the S was completely, it was his mother's name, maiden name.
Okay.
It was just added because they needed to fill in that spot on the form. But that meant his name spelt out the word hug. Hiram Ulysses Grant, which is not what he spent the rest of his life
He didn't
doing.
want to hug Robert E. Lee too much.
He wasn't hugging anyone.
No. Matt, I will cherish that trivia for the rest of the
I know you're a buff, so I'm giving you the little tidbits. We are all at a little bit of a disadvantage. Jean can't join us tonight because she has a personal commitment, and she's so dedicated to this committee and to her job, that it has to be important for her to miss a finance committee meeting. So thoughts go out to her. And it puts me at a slight disadvantage because I'm often given to presenting even preliminary numbers and relying upon Jean to help me out if they don't foot, or they're not too close to footing at the first week of January or second week of January. It's really not that unusual for us to be in this condition. So I will speak in some generality tonight because I don't have that resource to help us out. I thought perhaps one of the most effective things I could do to present the process this year is to focus on what we have for new revenues. There's Carol.
Hey, Carol, you there?
I am.
Okay, welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, carry on, Matt.
To present what we have for available resources over and above last year, and compare that to known expense increases, and characterize where we stand in general. This year, we'll talking about Trivial Pursuit. Here's one that a lot of people don't know about, and it's called Overlay. And in the municipal budget, overlay is the amount of revenue that you set aside because you anticipate having to abate taxes during the year. So you're not going to raise and appropriate at some later date. You set the money aside, and when the Board of Assessors meets and determines that the threshold burden of proof has been met for an abatement, they would abate those taxes out of the overlay account. This current fiscal year that we're in, we have a very large overlay because we had a very large building added to the tax rolls. And in an abundance of caution, the tax assessor advised us to hold aside a very large sum of money, $450,000, additional to the typical $100,000 that we put in the overlay in case the warehouse owner were to challenge the value of their building. Knock on wood, they have until February 1st. They've had months now since they've gotten their assessment and their initial tax bill, and they have not made any indication that they dispute the value. So what will happen after February 1st is, under the statute, the finance director, Jean, is not really authorized, she's more or less told by the law that she is going to release those funds, those monies back to free cash. This year that we're in.
Is that the
becomes a-
deadline, that February 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
That becomes a pad for this year's free cash certification, which is pretty much always one-time revenues, and so that's a pretty good chunk of one-time revenue. For the year that we're planning, fiscal '26, if you think about what this means, we raised and appropriated that money, but we didn't spend it. So it becomes part of the revenue base available for the following year's budget that doesn't result from the increase in the levy. It's already been raised and appropriated, it's already in the base. Now, the plot thickens because we budgeted to a surplus for fiscal '25, and we did not want to turn back levy capacity. So Jean, and this will be questions you'll have to ask Jean if you're curious about this, when we filed the recap, increased the overlay from 550 to 625,000, and also made additional changes to the local receipts estimate in order to soak up the surplus that we budgeted to, so that we wouldn't have unused levy capacity. We're not talking about a ton of money here, $80,000, $90,000, but that's in addition to what's being released back into the revenue stream from that overlay release. So that's a pretty solid building block. It will happen only once. It's not a recurring thing. We're back to reality, and we will stay in that holding pattern until we get the next big project with the next big value that gets added, okay? But it's part of this positive spiral that you get into when you start doing economic development. You get the building permit, you get new growth, then you get growth to the levy base, then you kind of have this trailing benefit of an overlay injection the following year. So it's like 4 years of good news when you build one building. If we did not have that this year, we would be in a full-on panic, I'll be honest with you, based on where we are with the budget. So just kind of file that in the back of your mind as $525,000. The levy will go up this year by about $556,000, more or less. I'm going to round to the nearest thousand if I can remember the digits. And we have a new growth figure of $300,000 that we're going to put into the budget that we feel confident reflects the current cost of building homes and where we will be in terms of the number of homes that will be assessed by the tax assessor by December 31st to join the following year's tax base. So when you add all that up and a couple of dribs and drabs here and there, you get to about 1.4 million. And that's sort of the defining edges of the envelope for what we have for budget flexibility this year for all the cost increases that are coming our way. There's going to be some upward movement on that 1.4 number because I'm going to reconcile Gene's disclosure and the recap. The recap is the legal document, right? It is those numbers are the real numbers. My budget spreadsheet kind of sits as an island, and I try to tie it back to those major milestones as closely as I can. There's a couple of things that are on that recap that I'm not fully confident to speak to, but I think we're looking more like 1.6, really, is what the define of the universe. And against that, we have a number of significant costs changes. And our commitment for the past several years has been to try to lean as far as we can into the headwinds around the costs of the Douglas Public School System and provide as much assistance as we can. And we've been doing year-over-year bottom line increases to the school department that are historically high compared to what was done in the past. And this year, that pattern will continue. So I've put in a 4% year over year. If you know, our historical average is closer to 1.5. So I have a 4, which translates into a little bit more than $615,000
For the school
to
department.
the bottom line just for the Douglas Public Schools.
Okay.
What is the reason we're going to go, what are their costs?
Oh, I'm getting to that.
Okay, sorry.
They're coming.
I'm getting to that.
Why?
You like to look around corners, don't you?
I know.
Heather knows them very well. In part of the decision that I made some time ago to engage in a multi-year pattern of trying to do this, some of it's because of the revenue possibilities opened up by economic development. Some of it is longstanding needs of the school department that got held back because the town had revenue constraints and wasn't able to fund them. And some of that is also reflective of the current trend, which is for massive cost increases in providing education to kids. So we are very sensitive to changes in the census at BVT. We are more sensitive to the changes in the census than we are in their operating budget cost changes. This year, I am putting on rose-colored glasses and thinking that they're going to come to us for a 4.5%. And last year was closer to 18. So obviously, this is could be wishful thinking. I'm actually thinking they've maxed out the number of kids they can take from Douglas. I don't know how many more they can take before there's controversy with everybody else over how many they take. So a 4.5 would reflect more or less what I think the underlying economics of the Douglas Public Schools are, plus another 0.5% because they're a little bit more specialized. A modest increase for Norfolk Aggie, about $37,000. Kind of depends on the census there, too. So in setting the context, we have to remember two things. One is that this year we are negotiating a collective bargaining agreement with the Massachusetts Teachers Association and Douglas Local. And our ongoing commitment with all of our employees is that we will maybe not put them at the top of the stack with their competitive set, but actually try to put them at the top of the bottom third. That's usually where we're trying to go, so that we're not simply not getting applications because we're not offering enough compared to other school districts with openings. And it's the same with the town. So there's work to do if we're to bring this union up to that level. And that's acknowledged by the school administration, the school committee's opening position. And I won't go into any detail about that, but I would say that it was a significant financial commitment to the teachers that their salary issues were being heard and that some attempt would be made to meet them. And from that initial position, there is no retreat. So we cannot bargain regressively from where we started off. And I obviously have no intention of doing so. So there's cost pressure there. That's your largest bargaining unit And personnel is pretty much between 75-80% of the cost of the school system. So you've got the lion's share of your school budget there, and I was hoping that a lot of that 615 would cover that potential wage agreement. In preparation for our last session with the teachers, we had a more free-ranging conversation about the school budget in general. And this is issue number 2 that you will recall from years most recent past, that the cost of special education, tuitions as well as transportation for out-of-district placements is very high and growing very rapidly. This is a very complex area of operations. I'm not qualified to answer your questions on it. I'm going to encourage the Finance Committee to, frankly, spend almost all of your time on the school budget this year. Because when I tell you what I'm looking for the town, you're going to giggle. Because I'm really looking for about 100 grand for the town, period. Everything else is going to the schools or fixed costs. So that's like a dime on a dollar for the town, which really constrains what I'm trying to do, but it is what it is. In preparation for our most recent negotiating session, I did ask the school business manager, I said, if you have a figure for the school bus contract, it would be very helpful. That tends to be a very volatile account, so the more I know in January, the better off I can plan. And she sent a spreadsheet back. I never really thought this would happen in a million years. I was already feeling kind of sick before going into the session with the teachers, and I looked at the number, and it was $450,000.
For
The school bus contract.
Oh.
Increase
Increase
for
over-
the
transportation,
bus.
Seriously?
Yes.
with most of that driven by
The
special
cost
ed,
of 5 buses and hired drivers.
Most of it's driven by the special ed.
for out-of-district placements. That's your overwhelming. I've been noticing this signing warrants. I'll tell you that my temperature is usually set by what the funding source is. So if the funding source is circuit breaker, my temperature doesn't go up as much as when it's scored against the general fund. But I have been noticing some pretty significant bills for transportation and tuitions. $450,000 for this town. Let's just go back over this. If the levy's going up $550, and if that was the only thing we had going up this year was the levy, then $450 would wipe us out. Literally wipe us out. The only reason why we're not in a full-on panic is because of that overlay piece. But transportation is going to be secondary to the cost of the tuitions at these institutions where the kids are being brought. And I don't know what that number is. There are many different ways to configure an approach to these issues in a school district. I think our administration has tried them all. So you can hire in contractual services. You could increase the number of paras and ABAs that you have, try to configure your classrooms differently. There's any number of variations on a theme that you can do. When you reach the point that you're going to place a student out of district, that's not a trivial decision that people make, and it's not really even about the money. It's about access to the proper level of educational effort, as well as social behavioral management. And you have to find a provider that has an open seat for that kid to sit in. So I'm sure they're doing the best they can to match the seats that are available to the kids' needs, and we're not just willy-nilly sending kids out. That they've tried every single option before they get to this point. Because most school districts want to keep their kids, their enrolled kids, in their own district. Makes sense. Having said all of this, that alone could be the issue that drives us kind of crazy through February and March. Because if we don't have any option but to pay those tuitions, then the school department will have to figure out how it's going to fund all of these things, knowing full well that I've given them just about every dime that I can. And frankly, my commitment would be anything they can save on the school bus contract, they can have. I don't want it back on the town side. So if they find a way to work out a more affordable way to do some of the transportation piece, and they can save it, they can have it. To put it into their bottom line, it's fine with me. The other big chunk this year, that is unfortunate, but I don't know if there's anything I can do about it at this point, is our health benefit. We've been on this running battle with this board. We've finally sent the last notice of withdrawal, so we had to go through a two-step process to get out of this joint purchase group. They are a complete and total train wreck. We got the 6-month financial report today. They're $4.5 million in the hole. So they're roughly 10% deficit. Heading into the time of the year when most of the claims are actually going to start to pile up. And our constraints on our cash position become much stronger because the group pays for all claims, and then anything that hits the stop loss attachment point, we could wait anywhere from 45, 60, even 90 days to be reimbursed by the stop loss carrier. So you have this cash crunch that is very rapidly getting to the point where it's going to suffocate the group. And my personal view is, I spent most of my career as a business consultant and even some of my municipal career working on receiverships and turnarounds. So I ask crazy questions like, how old are our payables? Right? I was assured today that even though we appear to be 2 weeks worth of revenue in the red, that because everybody pays at the beginning of the month, the treasurer has sufficient cash each time she checks her balance to pay the most recent bill that she's gotten. So we are not yet aging payables. Just bear in mind that we have a significant cost discount from our network because we promised to pay within 30 days. So if we begin to get to the point where our payables age past 30 days and we were to lose our preferred provider network discount, the wheels, at that point you're insolvent. You're not going to be able to provide a benefit anymore. How did all this come about is a matter of lots of self-serving opinions from lots of people. I will put it in a nutshell. The group grew too fast and became victimized by people whose agenda was political and financial and not about the benefit. And so they wrote themselves excessively low rates. You can't do that if you're a self-insured fund. You just can't. So some of our communities ran significant deficits and have not funded those deficits. So the towns in surplus, like Douglas and Medway, are basically the bank. And now they've chewed through our reserves, our savings. They've chewed through IBNR, and now they're not able to be solvent unless she checks the balance every day. I also think it is just my personal opinion, I think there are going to be some inquiries made from various channels of state government and elsewhere about the nature of the relationships of some of these people on this board. We found out today at our board meeting,
Now, when you say our board meeting,
the
consortium,
board, the 19 communities
Yeah.
and school districts that are in this group. We found out
The
today.
19 communities.
There's 19 now, there's 8 of us leaving, so there's going to be 11 in a couple of months. That we voted for a new general consultant to manage the group, and the contract was to be offered to start on July 1st with the new fiscal year. We found out today that the chairman, who was very good friends with the lead partner of that group, sent a broker of record letter to Aetna before January 1st. So we don't even have a contract, but he sent a broker of record letter before January 1st. I'm looking at the health insurance broker, because what's Aetna going to do in January? Comp.
What are they going to do?
Compensation. So this group that hasn't managed this account got their letter in time to be the broker of record on the date that Aetna cuts the check for comp, it's going to be well over $1 million. I can't sit idly by and watch this kind of hooey go on and not, so we're getting the heck out of this group. But this is not even close to talking about a benefit for our peeps, which is what we're all about. Taking us out of the group and putting us on an individual basis for at least a year is going to cost us some money. It's going to cost the stop-loss premium, and we probably have to collect enough to stay ahead of our claims so that we're not overexposed, because we are a small community.
Are you staying with the stop-loss model with another,
We're going to change it.
or
So I think what we're going to be looking at, we probably will form another group. We're going to do a lot more tiering, so the bigger groups are going to have higher specific attachment points. Smaller groups like Douglas are going to take an ag, which is, I have felt strongly about this from the beginning. We should have an aggregate coverage that kicks in around 110. I'm willing to pay for 100 at 110%, because what I want to do is build up enough surplus where I can take my specific spec and keep it going up and self-insure the major claims. As long as my ag's in place, I'm protecting the town of Douglas against risk. If you think about this, this releases energy over time. If you grow your reserves to sufficient strength, then you can pretty much pay your stop-loss premium out of the earnings from your trust account. That's the goal, right? But there's a complete and total lack of vision in this group. They don't understand what they're doing, and they've set us up. So what I need to do this year is about a 12%. So after 4 years of zeros, we're going to take a 12. So over the course of 6 renewals, our total is 20. So it's still, on average, each year, about 3%, which is still pretty darn good for a municipal group besides Douglas. So I'm still very proud. The model works if you have the right people engaged in it. It's going to cost us about $266,000 on the town share. Because we not only have that premium, that working rate change, we have a census change. So our demographic has changed considerably over the last 2 years. If you pay attention to this kind of thing, we've had almost complete turnover in the highway department. So we went from a highway department where the average age was in the low 60s to one where it's closer to the mid-20s.
that's good.
So a lot of people have retired.
Fewer claims, typically.
Yeah, well, they moved over to retiree coverage, so we've had a pretty big bump in our retiree census,
Are they all?
and more
Medicare
individual
Advantage?
plans than family plans.
You offer Medicare Advantage or Medicare Supplement?
Medicare Advantage, so it's a plan. We are still ridiculously low compared to the rest of the market. Because of the Inflation Reduction Act, though, it was force majeure, they blew through their rate cap, they were not going to sustain the rate cap. So we're at, oh, don't quote me, 3:30 PM. Still pretty, really good. So 6 years ago, when we left Tufts, we were paying 389 PM. So we've saved a lot of money over these last 6 years. And that is a vastly superior plan to the
Oh, yeah,
Tufts.
it's a
Vastly
national network, so.
So we're very happy with our plan, but, you know, I'm enlisting as much help as I can get from our collective bargaining units and others to put pressure on the situation, because I don't think it's a good one. Retirees will be up about 77,000, so that's going to put you up around 340,000 in increase for the health benefit for the town. After that, the numbers drop off precipitously, as they usually do. We have an annual increase to our retirement contribution, which will be about $171,000. That's like a 9.9% increase year over year. That is locked in. It's been locked in for the last decade. It's going to be locked in right through 2036. No matter how rosy a picture they try to draw, the Worcester Regional Retirement Board is still woefully underfunded. I don't know, the last I checked, they were 43%, trying to get to fully funded by 2036, which is a pipe dream. They'll never get there. But it is across the entire membership of the Worcester Regional Retirement Pension System. And after that, the numbers get really small. So going back to where I stand with the town's budget. The cost of the COLA and steps, about $83,000. Some adjustments I might make to some stipends and maybe a couple of merit increases, call it another 20. 103,000. That's all that we're looking for on the town side. Expenses will be 0% growth or negative. On paper, it's going to look negative, because I am not going to carry forward some of the expenses that we charged at Fall Town Meeting, which should not be that much of a surprise to you, because as you know, we wait until Fall Town Meeting before we put the tree warden's budget in place. We wait to see how the budget is panned out. So that's 50 grand I'm not going to redo. I'm not going to do another 20 grand for bounds, for subdivisions. That can wait. The land isn't going anywhere. It's not California. So I'm doing as much as I can to corral expenses and probably knock them down a few percentage points so that we can afford to do the rest of what we need to do this year. I had that briefing with department heads yesterday. I think everybody kind of gets it. They know where we are.
Do they
This is
already
the last
have a-
year of police cruisers, so we won't have that pretty significant expense in the operating budget next year. It'll be out.
So Matt, do the department heads have a rough roadmap on what kind of percent?
Yeah, don't spend anything,
Okay,
and everybody gets a 2% COLA.
okay.
Don't break anything.
Don't break anything.
No money.
Use the warranty if it still applies.
So in terms of you working on the master spreadsheet and so on, are there certain numbers you just have to wait to see what they're going to be in terms of how soon you can start
Typically, we
cobbling
chafe.
things together?
We chafe. I tell Howard this every year. I'll tell him again, through you, Mr. Chairman. If a bus hits me tomorrow, you can press the print button on the budget, and it will be balanced, and you could fund the government on it, because it would reflect trade-offs. How am I going to sharpen my pencil this year? I mean, I have some good news, I guess. We've been looking at property casualty premiums going up rather aggressively over the past 5 years or so, because we've had some monster claims. The look back for Maya is 7 years, and so we have one claim that's very large, that is going to roll off the look back. Now, it's the flood at the school buildings, if you remember. It was well over $1 million worth of damage from that flood. It came from a small leaky pipe in a chemistry lab or a biology lab, I forget exactly. But it ran for the better part of a school vacation week. It's like Noah showed up and opened the door. But that was extremely expensive. Maya is also getting extremely aggressive. They're not kidding around with us anymore.
What's MIA stand for again?
Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance something Association, something like that. In Rhode Island, it's the Interlocal Trust, same concept. So we have a much better rating base than we've had in the past for property and casualty, and very large deductibles have been instituted for us. So
Very large deductibles, what?
have been put in place for the town of Douglas, $25,000.
Yep.
Not a lot of choice.
No.
And given what's going on in the industry, that's going to be, actually, people are going to see that as a good deal.
That's what you have
Go.
to do.
Yeah. But to put the exclamation point on things that our broker of record on P&C has said, we are not an ATM machine for anyone. So you have to think twice before you file a claim. If it's not worth it, then don't file it, pay it. Get your own repairs. So that's good, because really I'm budgeting a 3% increase on that, which is very doable within the confines. I consider that to be a fixed cost. That's not on the town side. So that's really most of it in a nutshell. There's not
Any
going to be a
questions
whole
for
lot.
Matt? Anybody?
Any potential tenants for the big property?
So I don't like to jinx myself. I do like to be an optimist, though. I think they're pretty close to pay dirt. for a tenant that will take at least 50%, but maybe as much as the whole building. I'm always very relieved when the potential tenant is a business that, from its size and industry, is unlikely to need to leave the building because of its own performance issues as a company. So I like the idea of this particular, I'm not going to divulge it, I really shouldn't, but I like the idea of a major international company that you've all heard of. Being present there, and then what happens there is there'll be a build-out inside the building that we will get some tangible tax, some so-called personal tax from that. It won't be there'll be no manufacturing done inside the building, so we'll get some tax revenue from that. So that'll be a little bit of a bump to New Grove.
And what's being built on Route 16 where they cleared all the land at the border of Webster?
Nothing special.
No.
So that's going to be an outdoor storage facility for people to store RVs and boats. And
Oh, okay.
it's meets a need, it's just not going to generate very much tax revenue.
Okay.
Having said that,
I didn't know if it was another pizza place.
it was generating zero. No, there was going to be a pizza store there.
Or
And
pizza.
Dunkin'
You don't know my whole thing? You got to know my whole
The
thing.
pizza next to the cannabis shop.
There was a cannabis shop
Yeah.
that had originally bought the lot, and I was pushing for them since that lot is the sum total of the adult entertainment district in Douglas. I was hoping for Porna Potta Tacotopia, where you get your porn, your tacos, and your pot all in the same step. And none of it's going to happen. Now it's a place to park your RV. So, no meals tax, no cannabis tax, unfortunately.
No strippers.
No, that wouldn't really be a good idea, That was all for Webster, that wasn't for Douglas. But that's what's going on there. No, the bigger issue is going to be pine, sand, and gravel and what goes in there. As you know, if you've been watching select board meetings, there's an industry dynamic behind data centers. Data centers are extremely attractive to municipalities because the equipment inside is replaced on a regular basis. It has a very high value in a 5-year depreciation table. And each time it's refreshed, it's new growth. So it's a ratchet, right? It's a ratchet effect with significant values. The downside is that those facilities command a tremendous amount of electricity. And there is more than one way to get them the power they need, but they actually need not only power, they need redundant power. So they need power from more than one source.
They come into two sides of the building, they'd have backup generators on site. I used to audit those facilities.
Yeah. So now data centers, especially those that deal with artificial intelligence, are using so much power. I mean, a small data center is 400 megs. So, that's the downside to it. How much do we want to invest in attracting that type of industry? This is the Dorothy thing. There's no place like Douglas, there's no place like Douglas, right? There is no site like Pine. If you're going to build a data center, what have you got? High tension power lines, a high pressure gas line that runs through one edge of the property. The fiber runs right up Route 146, so you're right there, right next to fiber. The town has put brand-new water and sewer loops, and the place is a flat, wide-open site next to a highway. So there really isn't anything like this anywhere else in the Commonwealth, so there's
Really,
a lot of interest.
I really commend everybody to watch the select board meeting of January 7, where you went into this at some length, I thought, and
Yeah.
I wondered when Mass Electric will build a substation in Douglas.
And the thing is Massachusetts is a very cool state in that it hasn't been done since 1903, but municipalities can form light and power companies and control some of these assets. And it's very attractive to think of what we could do if we could store power, if we had battery storage farm of considerable size, and we could buy power or generate power at cheap rates and sell it into the grid during high peak hours. My motivation is singular. While the money's attractive, we are at the end of 3 feeder lines. There is no feeder line that completely covers all of Douglas and then ends somewhere else. They're all terminating in your town. So if there's a rolling brownout, folks, I don't know what you think. I'm thinking the guys at the end of the line are most likely to feel the brunt of rolling brownouts. I don't know what to believe, right? I just know what I'm reading from people who know a lot about the grid, who know a lot about industry, are saying that as we electrify our lives and we become more and more dependent on artificial intelligence, which sucks up huge amounts of power, that the grid is going to be overtaxed. And there is a conversation that is at virtually every conference I go to about rolling brownouts. So if that's the case, then our responsibility as a town government, if we have the opportunity to put together the kind of economic development deal that will prevent you from facing the worst of that, we should probably pursue that. So that is the motivation. But, eventually, there'll be some kind of building at Pine that generates revenue. Now, if it were to be a standard warehouse, we would probably see it within the next 3 years, and we would start to see the benefits of that within 1.5 years after permitting. So that's the timing's so much more attractive. Data center's 5 years away. A warehouse is 1.5 years away. So we have one potential client for the cubes at Gilboa, which was a very attractive opportunity for the town, that probably it would be better off if they had a building that was built to suit. And so maybe there's an opportunity that they would, CRG would build to suit this particular tenant, and they would make their decision to consolidate their operations across Commonwealth here instead of somewhere else.
What about the property that's next door to the cubes, the Old Bosma Golf Course?
So most of that's in Uxbridge.
Oh, that's right, you're right.
The town line is right there.
Yeah, I'm forgetting that, it's just over the line.
If the tenant goes forward, that we're hoping goes forward, for Cubes at Gilboa, they would be looking to buy what the town does own, about 17 acres, to buy that from us for parking.
For parking?
Now, it's very challenging for me, because I've got to follow Chapter 30B, Section 16, for the sale of real estate. If you've been in the commercial real estate business, you know, nobody pays like an abutter. So abutters are always willing to just like, I really, really, really want that, and that's the kind of situation we're in. So if I put it out to auction, right, and if nobody else bids, then the abutter picks the property up for a song when they would have been willing to pay a lot more for it. So I'm going to try to skin the cat with our dear friends at the Attorney General's office to see if there's a way to not really sole source it, but write up this competition in a way, or the appraisal in a way where we at least get the taxpayer some value for the land. It's weird that the town of Douglas owns land that is located in the town of Uxbridge. It's a artifact of the border between the towns swinging back and forth over a couple of times over a couple hundred years.
How about North Street, Matt, at the Sutton line? That was on hold because, right, the developer pulled out or something, but,
I don't know about the residential one, because I'm wondering too. We did a lot of tech review and a lot of reviews of plans. The housing market hasn't really gotten that soft. They were going
but
to.
some grants didn't come through, right, for?
Oh, you mean the overall development project?
Yeah,
No, the grants did not come through.
so they're not going to be able to repave and do new drainage and all that stuff.
So it's all tied to the Pine development, right? because that property's going to come around the back and join North Street near the Sutton border. The part of the project that we feel really has to go forward, because commitments were made when the warehouses were built on both sides of 146, that they would not need to build individual fire suppression water towers on their property, because the town, as part of a larger development strategy, was going to build a municipal water storage tank on North Street.
Up at the top there.
And we had the property there to do it because it was donated to the town as part of the North Village 40B project. I don't know that we can escape that. So I think this year we're going to really refine our Mass Works grant and our EDA grant activity to be solely the water tank and the pipes necessary to make that go. What impact that has on realignment of North Street, I'm not prepared to say yet, but I know the answer, yes.
So Matt, our job as Finance Committee is to ultimately advise the town meeting in May. Do you, at this point, do you foresee any things on the warrant of a really uniquely financial nature that could be contentious in terms of priorities of how we're spending money or where the money's going to come from?
Contentious? No.
Okay.
Wrought with worry? Yes. I think that's going to depend on what the school committee is able to get accomplished.
So as we look ahead at the departments coming in to talk to us about their budget, is your sense that the one with the school committee will be the most important because of the percentage it is of the total
It's
budget?
everything. It's your whole conversation. I mean,
Okay.
you got nothing to talk to me about, 2% COLA, if we go there. Now, if I shrug my shoulders and give up, I give you 100 grand. That's not going to fix your problem.
Do we need the other departments coming in?
I think you should come and hear from Highway, because we will be putting the Highway barn on the warrant for the spring. Now, how controversial that is, I don't know. I think by the time we're done with the design, we will arrive at the most affordable option, far more affordable than other communities have, and it'll simply be straight up or down. Do the people want it or not? I think it'll go a long way towards preserving the assets. I mean, we purchased all this stuff, then we park it outside. It's kind of unfortunate. So if we had a large enough building where we can handle all of our equipment, then we could start to clean out some really good equipment we have in some really decrepit buildings. Get it all in one central location, take care of it. And it'll be a building that will be very utilitarian, very functional, no frills, could probably last you 40, 50 years, take care of it.
I know at the town meeting, that item on the agenda was one of the more contentious items, especially with the number of people that actually were there specifically to vote on that one item. Do you think that would be an issue moving forward?
It will be, not for me. There are limited possibilities for where to put this thing. And limited pieces of property that are situated within the town in a way that's most advantageous for the function. I personally don't care much, and will make a recommendation in this vein, that if what you need is 5 acres of usable space, and you buy 17 to get 5, and a lot of it gets wasted because of a stream or a wetland, or so be it. Because where else are you going to put the thing? I think we got a very good price. The property comes with a house that we're going to use for office space, so we're not going to build office space in the highway barn. We're going to use the house for those functions. So you're basically building a metal barn. And so at that point, you're stripping a lot of the costs out of this thing. So I think it's a good deal, frankly. The expense is a related and probably necessary project that isn't necessary for the highway bond, but it's necessary for the town in general, which is to address waterline concerns roughly from Franklin Street up to Rydell, a little bit past Rydell, past the existing highway barn. You've had significant water main breaks on that. That is the main that transports water between two of our larger storage facilities, right? And once you open the ground on by far the busiest street in town, shouldn't you do everything at once? So that's the million-dollar question, multi-million-dollar question. If you're going to be in the ground, why not run sewer as far as you can so that you never again terrorize the residents of the town of Douglas by tearing up Main Street? Because it's going to be it'll be a pain in the keister to do it.
Yeah.
But the water line has to go because it's just old and in bad condition. And then once you have a project that large, the pavement piece is actually cheap compared to the rest of it. So you pave curb to curb. So you have brand-new Main Street with water and sewer under it. It's a pretty hefty lift. We originally intended to use ARPA funding for that, and then the timing on the design, it was going to take so long to get that project shovel-ready that we just opted to do Depot Street instead with the same funds, so.
Did they figure out their problem of who owns that land,
Which land?
where the barn's going to go on Rydell?
There's never been a problem with who owns the
I
land.
thought when we had the meeting, there was like the attorney for like.
Anybody can say anything at any
Yeah.
time. It
But
doesn't
that
mean
woman
it's
is
true.
the owner, right?
She's the owner.
Yeah.
That's all, who's the deed on record with?
Yeah.
Deed's in her name at the Registry of Deeds. There's no evidence to the contrary, so.
Okay, other question? Carol, you still there?
Yeah,
She's on mute.
she left and she came back.
Okay, okay. Any other questions for Matt? Anybody in terms of process as we get into working on the budget between now and April?
Just a general curiosity, if you had something like a data center, would that require, and would that benefit the town from the sake of, potentially more fiber optics to improve internet service in the town or what have you? Because I know you have limited options throughout the town for internet because you just don't have, you don't have the cabling and the fiber optics. Would that be something that would potentially be a positive for the town in the long run?
So if you're adding an item to the wish list for the development agreement with data center, you may have settled upon it. Obviously, we have 86 miles of road, 9,000 people, so people are pretty spread out, so it becomes expensive to hardwire everybody and give everybody the level of service they want, the speeds that they want. It would certainly be something worth pursuing, right? Our current provider stinks. There's no nice way to say it. They have monopoly. We just renewed our license with them, but there was no negotiation. It was dictated to us what they were going to do. One of the things you can do with municipal light and power is you can focus only on wireless and wired cable service, if you choose to do that. There ends up being more to it than people realize. So in the town where I live, we voted this. We actually voted to form municipal light and power simply for cable. Because we are, like Douglas, we're a Spectrum Charter monopoly community. And it hasn't taken off yet. That was 3 years ago. Because they realized that when they started adding up base stations and towers and wires, it ended up being more expensive than they thought it was going to be.
So, but that's late, Rob, so.
These people walk in and throw money around like it's nothing, and you almost feel guilty participating in the conversation with them, but if that's what they're going to do, that's what they're going to do. I know you guys know this, but I'll state it again for the record, CRG, as part of the development agreement, is donating $300,000 worth of equipment to the town of Douglas that is relevant to the maintenance of the utilities that we connected to their building. So there's a valve exercising machine. It's really complicated, hydraulic skid, basically. It sits on a trailer, but it turns valves so that they're exercised on a regular basis in the water system.
They don't freeze.
So some of these things are 100-turn valves. And we have our 50, 60-year-old employees with rusty valves, doing 100 turns. You can imagine the exposure we have to risk of repetitive motion injury and acute injury. It's all alleviated by this thing with the trailer. Mini excavator and a trailer to haul it around on, so
And
that we can do repairs.
where's the temporary stoplight being stored?
That's a state secret.
Okay. Just curious, so.
I believe
It's
They're-
hanging in the bar in somebody's basement.
Howard's
right?
I
garage.
believe they're in Cottage Street.
The
And
old
if they're
fire
not in
station.
Cottage Street, they are at the Water Department's barn and the old Buckeye property. But I'm pretty sure they're at the old fire station.
Anybody else questions for Matt? Carol, you with us?
She's gone.
Now she's left.
Okay, all right. All right, well, Matt, thank you. And,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt.
We'll be talking in the next couple of months, I'm sure.
Well, we'll start handing paper around when Gene's here. We can
Yeah.
defend the numbers, but I kind of, not going to change a whole lot.
You may head for home if you want.
I do.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, if we look at our agenda, we've got some minutes. October 22, did you get a chance to read those over? I sent them to you. Any discussion on the October 22 minutes, anybody?
Thank you.
Rob, you weren't here, so
No, so
you
I'm not going to vote on them.
wouldn't vote
so-
on them, but I know Carol had wanted to wait till tonight to look at them, but I think
She left.
she has to dismiss, so. Are we good with October 22 group?
Other than I'm named as Ryan Howard, we're good.
How did she do it?
I'm named as Ryan
Oh,
Howard. instead of Hogan.
She was thinking of Ron
Everybody's
Howard.
jumping on the name.
Can somebody move that we accept the minutes of October 22, 2024, acknowledging Ryan's correct spelling?
So moved.
Michael, thank you. Any second, anybody?
Second.
Lynn seconds. Any discussion? So all in favor of approving these minutes with that name correction, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
Aye.
Heather and Rob are abstaining, so the motion
Oh,
carries.
Carol's back.
Hi, Carol. How are you?
Hi. Good. I'm having a lot of problems with this, so it keeps coming out on me.
Well, we appreciate your effort at staying with us, though, Carol, so we're almost done, by the way, so just hang in there a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
All right, how about the minutes of November 18? Any discussion on that? I had emailed Stephanie, the minute taker, just to say that we did reconvene after the town meeting, and we had no new business, so we adjourned. And so she can add that to these minutes. But anybody else on November 18? Somebody move that we accept them?
So moved.
Lynn, thank you.
Second.
Michael, seconds. Discussion, anyone? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
Rob?
Bye.
Howard.
So Howard, Rob, Brian,
And
or
Carol.
Carol.
I think Carol voted yes.
Oh, Carol, you're voting yes, right? Oh, we're supposed to do roll call vote, aren't we, if somebody's on Zoom?
That's true. You are correct.
Okay, should we do that on
Yes.
that too?
Yeah, we
All
probably
right.
should go back and redo that one.
So we're gonna, Carol, are you with us, Carol?
She wasn't there for the first vote.
Carol, yes.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go back and do November 18 a minute, because Carol already said yes, so just to say our name, and if you...
Sure. Howard D'Amico, yes.
Robert Leonardi abstained.
Okay,
Lynn Mazzulli, aye.
yeah,
I'm sorry, these are the
18th.
18th. Ryan Hogan abstained.
I'm sorry. I've got that wrong too then.
Okay, you're abstaining on the
No,
18th.
which one are we voting on?
18, November 18th.
Then I apologize, I abstain.
Okay, so Howard abstains, abstain.
Yes.
Jay, abstain. Dick Vandenberg, aye.
Michael Hutnak, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Sandy Kuiper's aye.
Okay, sorry about that.
What about Carol?
And Carol did aye already, right?
Yes.
So now let's go back.
I say aye.
Okay. Now we're going to go back to October 22, and we'll do it again. We have to do a roll call because Carol's on Zoom, so you want to start, Howard?
Sure. Howard D'Amico, aye.
Robert Leonardi abstain.
Lynn Mazzulli, aye.
Brian Hogan, aye.
Dick Vandenberg, aye.
Michael Hutnak, aye.
Heather Moore and abstain.
Sandy Kuiper's aye.
Okay,
Carol Dogalinsky, aye.
okay. Thank you, everybody. We're done with the minutes. Gene is not here, so we don't have any reserve fund transfers. So let's look at the next 3 dates, everybody. So Howard, you had asked a question about having department heads in. What's your thinking on that?
Well, only insofar as Matt made it pretty clear that the departments outside of the school will have de minimis events this year, right? There are marginal budgets all the way across the board. There are no cruisers this year, there's no big fire apparatus. To the extent, and the highway department makes sense, given the project. But other than that, I don't know that we need to see groups come in. I'll defer to the chair on that, but otherwise we could bring them in 10-minute loops, and run them through, but they're pro forma this year.
Yeah, they are that's for sure. So what's your thinking, group, about police, fire, Board of Health, Council of Aging, et cetera? We usually have them come in and talk for a little bit so we can get an overview of what they're doing. Is that okay with everybody? Or do we not need to see some because it seems like it's kind of a pro forma 2%? I think,
I mean, I would tend to agree with Howard. I guess my only slight reservation would be, in terms of due diligence, should we have, or at least provide an opportunity that if they, I know we've got some financial constraints here, and they've gotten guidance from Matt, but, like what we've done in previous years of, is there anything that's on your wish list that we can't get to? To give them a sounding board, I guess.
Kind of, yeah, right.
That's, again,
It's
it's
still,
a
yeah.
minor reservation, but
It's a professional courtesy
Yeah,
too,
to just
so-
say,
so
if
just
you
instead of
want.
2 an hour, 3 or 4,
Yeah.
right? Just 2 nights of 7 or 8 boards.
Or even give them a professional invitation and say, if you've got nothing,
Yeah.
you don't want to bring
Right.
something to the table or a request, then so be it. You don't have to show up, but to at least give them an opportunity, I think, to.
Yeah, because like you said, they might have something on their wish list that we're going to see them come forward the following year.
Right.
So they want to put it on our radar to maybe just throw it out there. But I don't think it'll take anybody a long time this year if they can't do anything.
it seems to me, as a finance committee, though, it's, like you said, it's professional respect to
Yeah.
have the police, have the fire come in and walk us through their
Sure.
top 2 or 3
Sure.
things, right?
But if you have 3 or 4 in a night, everybody's got a better understanding that we're, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need to hear about the $10 toaster purchase.
No.
Right?
I think it's also because as we free up cash, right? Because we are DTA, school is in negotiations. Once we have that unknown and get a little bit better in the budgeting process to know where we are going with the special ed costs.
That's
that
a
are
killer.
being-
In the
right?
transportation, yeah,
The
right?
transportation, then you would be able to go, okay, we hopefully will be able to settle the DTA with the school, on the school side. We're able to then go and look at what did they say to us so that we can possibly make the recommendation either for town meeting in May or for fall town meeting. We know that they're at the wish list that was there, right? Because that's normally when you get the free cash certification.
Right.
That's where we use it, right? So I think it's a courtesy, but I'm also thinking we have enough foresight to go, if there's a way for us to do it, we can go, okay, in the fall, we're going to address these, right? Because that's normally what happens is, we don't get it in the spring one, we address it in the fall, but we'd be in advance of knowing what the requirements are.
So Heather, when should we try to have the school folk come in? As late as possible? like end of March, process-wise? Is February too early?
I don't think February is too early. I think, I don't think February is too early.
Okay.
What about BVT? When should we have them come?
And I wonder if has Dr. Fitzpatrick
Fitzpatrick's
retired?
Right.
He's end of the school
This,
year.
right, but
They'll have one more
isn't he
time
going to
with us.
still
He'll have
come?
one more
Yeah.
time with us.
And he'll probably bring whoever's his,
Local person.
yeah, his
Yeah.
replacement.
Yeah.
They're doing a search, so.
Oh, they don't have one yet?
Well, they usually have a representative from their school board coming
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
So any objection, FinCom members, if Gene and I sort of sit down and start working on who comes in when, with the idea that it's kind of a highlights presentation?
Yeah.
That you
I would say
trust
the
us on
school
that?
should, the school should get their own night. That would be my only recommendation.
I would agree.
Yeah, agreed, I
I
agree.
would say usually we do them in BBT. I would just do the Douglas schools and put BBT with some of the other.
Agreed. I think there's a nice separation there anyway.
So consensus there that we'll have one night that will just be the school?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the other nights, kind of a greatest hits for everybody,
Yeah.
just what's on their mind?
Yeah.
All right, so, and you can't be here at the other meeting in January, was it, Heather?
Yes, I'm not going to be there.
Does anybody know of any dates on here, at least through February, where you won't be here? Heather
of
won't
these
be here
three?
on the 28th.
Out of these three, you
Out of these three, yeah.
not going
February
forward.
25.
You won't be here, Sandy? Howard, you notice it's not on Valentine's Day this year. so-
Great, right?
That is
Saving the
wonderful.
marriages, right?
So
Not that I don't all love you all, but
Right.
So Heather, you're absent on the 28th of January, right?
Yes.
And Sandy, February 25, right? And Rob, it's just so great to have our ninth person on the Finance Committee, so we can meet that quorum if people are sick or traveling or whatever.
Or
Happy
out
to
of-
have joined.
Or out of the country.
that would be me.
Okay, so Gene and I will work on the schedule, and we'll just keep everybody posted.
Is there any need for a January 28 meeting?
I'll get back to you on that. I'll check with Gene, and if maybe in February we can do
Right?
fire, police, and so on, and maybe
Yeah.
March, work on the school and so on, but it's not written in stone yet.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right, Carol, any questions at all?
Nope, I'm all set.
Anybody have any comments or questions?
One other thing
Okay,
that
Ryan.
occurred to me, just in the planning, do we need a separate meeting for the highway barn? As opposed to just doing that?
That's part of the regular one, you mean?
That's part of 20 articles. Be a long night. Highway barn's gonna be a huge expense to the town. Do we do that 2 weeks before?
That's a
Something
good
to think
question.
about.
Yeah, I'll make a note of it. Thank you, Ryan, for that.
Maybe even group that with capital.
Sure.
Maybe, yeah. All right, anybody else have a question or a comment as we get ready to do the budget process?
Are we going to have any kind of a vote to recommend one or the other team win the national championship? Oh, I'm sorry, never mind.
I thought you were going to recommend who the Patriots coach is going to be, Howard, so.
Too late.
I have an alma mater in the game, I'm just saying.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I got a team through finally.
Okay, good. All right, anybody else on anything? All right, motion to adjourn, anybody?
To adjourn?
Second.
Sandy made the motion at 8:10. Heather seconds. Any discussion? Okay, we got to do a roll call vote because we're on Zoom, so why don't you start, Sandy?
Sandy Kuiper's aye.
And the more and I.
Michael Hutnick, aye.
Dick Vandenberg, aye.
Brian Hogan, aye.
Lynn Mazzulli, aye.
Robert Leonardi, aye.
Howard D'Amico, aye.
Carol
Carol?
Gogolinsky, aye.
All right, we adjourned at 8:10.